When we're in a diminished physical state, which we are going to be at times during this experience, when we're in a diminished physical state, we have to fight to keep our mind in that growth mindset, in that abundance mindset, in the positive mindset. So you just have to recognize that. You might need sticky notes all over your house, on your mirrors, literally, everywhere to remind you you're not done, to remind you you've got fight left in you.
Welcome to Suburban Warrior, the podcast that will impact, inspire, and empower you to transform your mindset and become the badass warrior that you are. I'm your host and fellow warrior, Chrissy Pfeiffer, former clinician and corporate marketing exec turned multi-passionate entrepreneur, performance and life coach, and mom to 4 not-so-little warriors. Each week, I will bring you honest conversations with inspiring guests to share their stories of resilience, optimism, success, and simple yet effective strategies so that you transform your thoughts and change your behavior to get the results you want in your life. You will be empowered to take action, warrior up, and believe in you. Let's do this. What's up, warriors? Welcome back to another episode of the Suburban Warrior Podcast. I'm your host, Chrissy Pfeiffer, and I am back this week with another amazing suburban warrior, and she's here to share her story and expertise with us. And this week, I have a very special guest on. She is my friend and colleague because we have collaborated in the past together doing some really fun projects. And I have to say that every time I have worked with her, she has just fueled my soul and filled my bucket because she is just one of those people that is just so special to be around. And I've always learned so much from her. So I'm excited for all of you guys to hear from her and learn from her today. I think that we are kindred spirits with a similar passion, really to live our most joyful and healthiest lives and help others do the same. So without further ado, let me introduce to you my friend, Cara Bradley. She is a national board certified health and wellness coach, certified menopause specialist, and certified strength and conditioning specialist with over 40 years of experience in the mind-body field. She helps individuals reset habits, quiet mental chatter, and build the clarity and energy needed to feel better from the inside out. Cara is the author of On the Verge, Wake Up, Show Up and Shine, and the founder of Verge Yoga Center. She was named one of the most powerful women in the mindfulness movement by Mindful magazine. Welcome to the podcast, Cara.
Oh, it's so good to be here, Chrissy.
I know every time I talk to you and have a conversation, I just feel so great afterwards. Like I said, I feel like you just, fill my bucket and fuel my soul. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today. And I know my listeners will feel the same when they're done listening to this episode. So thank you for being here. And first, tell us a little bit more about your background. And because like you said, you have been in the mind-body field really your whole life. And I think that's why, when I talk to you, there's such clarity, there's such wisdom. So tell us a little bit about your background and sort of how you ended up again here as a certified health and wellness coach and menopause specialist.
Yeah, I think the best place to start is when I was a kid, and I won't bore you with all the details in between, but I was a figure skater.
Yeah.
And I loved everything about skating. I especially loved doing figures. We did something called figure eights back then. They don't do it anymore. And what I discovered as a kid was as I was tracing this figure eight on the ice by myself, sometimes before school, is that when I was thinking about stuff like boys and lunch and my homework and stuff like that, I would go flat on my blade, which was not what I was supposed to be doing. So it was like back then I would play these games with myself. Like if I could really, really, really just focus on what I was doing, then maybe I could hold the edge, right? So it was, crazy that mindfulness was coming to me back then. But I actually think that most kids are in flow and mindful and experiencing present so much more often than we are. So that's one thing. But the other thing when it comes to skating happened when I was around 15. And my parents basically told me I was going to have to start paying for my skating if I wanted to continue. And so back then I turned professional. I went from amateur skater to pro skater, and I started teaching adults. So I started teaching adults how to figure skate. And what I noticed is when they came on the ice, these adults, of course, I was 15, they looked really, really old. And their faces were scrunched and their ears were up by their, shoulders were up by their ears, and they were like really, really stiff. But after a half hour, 45-minute lesson, I saw them look like kids again. Like their faces were bright, they were gliding on the ice, they were lower to the ground. They looked youthful. And so it was back then at 15 when I realized I really like this. I like being a part of transformation. Yeah. And that has carried me up until this day. Like I love on whatever medium, whether it be fitness or yoga, meditation, or all the other stuff that I've taught, I love being a part of facilitating transformation. To me, it is like one of the most rewarding things in my life, just to help somebody in some way, shape, or form feel better, be more joyful. And so here we are today, and I'm still doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I totally agree with you. I feel like being a part of those aha moments and those transformational moments with other people, and really feeling that connection and knowing that there's education and transformation that has happened in your presence. It really is so impactful and lifts you up, as you're lifting others up. And it's really just, such a wonderful feeling. And to watch someone else transform right before your eyes and see the growth that happens is really important and significant. So that's a really interesting story. And thanks for sharing it with us. Okay, so let's talk about what you do now, because now you are specifically helping with perimenopause and menopausal women, which is obviously, that's my listener base. That's what we're talking about, women in midlife. And, really first and foremost too, I think a lot of us, who have experienced it, obviously you're menopausal, I'm menopausal, we've been through it. I know really a big reason why I do this now is because I'm hoping to reach that perimenopausal audience, the women who are experiencing symptoms but don't realize that it's perimenopause because no one has told them, their doctors aren't telling them, they're getting, mixed messages from their doctors, and they're just spinning their wheels, which is what happened to me for 10 years of my life. And I'm hoping that I can get them before they have to suffer for 10 years like I did. Tell us a little bit about your journey and sort of why that brought you to, specifically focusing on menopause.
Yeah, well, you said it. I mean, I hope as well, and I have a feeling it's going to be the case that women that are now in their late 30s, early 40s have so much more at their fingertips than I did. Because I spent 10 years continually losing my sense of self. What is happening to my body that I have, I've been fit all my life. What is going on with this body? Why am I moody? Why am I feeling anxious? Why am I losing confidence in myself? And then everything else in between, developing things like tinnitus out of nowhere. And, all of these things that we now know are symptoms of menopause. So I was in that cycle as well, Chrissy, for, I want to say a good 10 years. I was diagnosed with adrenal fatigue. Okay, yes, I'm burned out. So I put all of my eggs in that basket thinking that's what was wrong with me. Yeah. But meanwhile, my body was going through this massive shift that I just never connected the dots until, honestly, I was in my mid-50s. And I was like, holy crap, all this stuff I've been feeling. And so just like you, I don't want other women to have to go through this. Yeah. Because there's absolutely no reason. And we have so much to give in these years. So for us to feel less than and like underwater. I hear a lot of women saying, I just feel like I'm
Yeah.
underwater.
Yeah.
It's not useful, not only for ourselves and our families, but for the world.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's such a great description. Feeling like you're underwater, because it really does some days just feel like that's how you're moving through the world, just underwater. Can't hear, can't see straight, can't figure it out. And so, so you talked about like physically how you were in your body and asking those questions about, how is this me? How, what's happening to my body? Why is this happening? And I know you and I have talked about a little offline too about like all of the things that actually happen in your mind too, and how it's affecting your brain. And I think that that's less talked about these days. I know obviously one big, physician out there who's talking about it, Dr. Lisa Mosconi, the menopause brain. But, I think the average woman who's not, researching menopause and reading all these menopause books like you and I are, don't really know and understand all of the effects that perimenopause and menopause can have on your brain health and on your mental health. So let's talk a little bit about that today, because I know you've experienced those symptoms and know a lot about that. So tell me, first and foremost, I know mentally I definitely had a lot of symptoms going on. Did you experience some mental symptoms as well?
No doubt.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And a lot of the symptoms of menopause brain fog include just feeling like you can't get the words out.
Yeah.
You lose track of yourself, right? I think for me, I remember I was like 47 and I was ordering something online and I literally had to look my zip code up. I was like, what? What is going on? And I know that other women feel the same way. And then,
Yeah.
of course, now we're thinking early onset dementia, like, oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
there are these hiccups that happen in our brain because as estrogen starts to go crazy, right, in perimenopause, up, down, and then nosedive and flatline in menopause, postmenopause, our brain receptors, those estrogen receptors, are looking for estrogen and
Yeah.
are not finding estrogen. So there's all of this confusion and these speed bumps and hiccups that are happening. And so what a lot of women feel, and I have felt almost every single one of these: irritability, rage,
Yeah.
sadness,
Yep.
anxiety, inability to speak clearly, to remember things like, why did I come in the kitchen? And then there's also a lot of inability to focus when you're reading. Like,
Yeah.
what's with
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
right? So women are midlife women, early 40s, mid 40s, early 50s, are being medicated for ADHD. They're being put on anti-anxiety, antidepressants, and I'm not saying there's not a place for those medications, but
Yeah.
let's look a little bit deeper. Let's understand, all of the shifting that's happening. And then the other big thing, Chrissy, that attributes to the brain fog is the sleep interruptions.
Yeah.
So we're just not feeling rested, which then exacerbates all of those symptoms from the get-go.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was on an Oprah special. I was a contributing person in the audience when she had some authors on the show, and I was fortunate enough to be a part of that series and be a contributor in the audience. And a lot of women in the audience were asking questions, and one of the overwhelming symptoms that women were talking about, because everyone in the audience was women in midlife, was this new onset anxiety that and it was like irrational anxieties and irrational thoughts that start coming up in their head that no one really realized that it was because of menopause, but it really are thoughts and feelings that make you feel like you're going crazy because they sort of come out of nowhere. And, I know I definitely experienced that. And remember thinking like, what are these thoughts? Like, why am I thinking this? And then you start feeling guilty and you start feeling like shamed, and you're like, why are these thoughts even coming into my head? And then when you do experience like a new onset anxiety, that's really scary, because if it's not something you've ever experienced before, here you are like a 45-year-old woman experiencing a new onset of anxiety. and it could be out in public, it could be at work, it could be, in a social setting, and you just don't know how to deal with it. And it's so scary. And because it's mental, it's not something that you really like talk about to friends, or you're willing to say to someone, which we should, but we normally don't. Like if you have a stomach ache and you're at a party, you're gonna be like, oh my God, my stomach hurts, I gotta leave. But if all of a sudden you're having these thoughts, or, a panic attack, you're not gonna be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm having a panic attack, I need to leave the party. But without realizing that this is not you, you're not going crazy, that it is hormonal disruptions that are causing this. And I really think that a lot of women don't realize that.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that as well?
Absolutely. And I think that once they do, it's such a relief to know you're not alone.
Yeah.
And I think this is, part of our work, Chrissy, honestly,
Right.
is to encourage women to talk to each other.
Yes.
Like our mothers, I asked my mother, what was your menopause experience like? And she's like, I don't even remember it. It was fine. I'm like, thanks, Mom. That was real helpful. Okay. Guess I'm on my own again.
Right.
But really, like when we were pregnant, right? When we were having children, for women that had children, like that's all we talked about with each other. Oh my gosh, this and this trimester and blah. And so if we can get to that point where we can start to normalize this all and not have to be superwoman and have all our ducks in a row all the time, I think this is what is going to really open things up for future generations of women. So we can start now. What was your menopause like? In fact, I encourage a lot of my clients, talk to older women, even though you may get the answer that I got from my mother, but even a few years older.
Yeah.
What's working for you?
Absolutely.
What did you do? Who did you have on your team supporting you? And I think that really is going to change a lot, especially around the brain, because there are so many women, 1 in 5 women are quitting their jobs because they feel, during this time, because they feel like they're not capable, that they're invisible, that they're going irrelevant, because their minds aren't as sharp. And that, it's hormone related. There's a reason why our brains don't feel as sharp. And there are things that we can do about it, at least to support and get through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that statistic is really terrible. I mean, 1 in 5 women. And
I know.
And the other terrible statistic is that I believe that the highest rate of suicide in women is between the ages of 45 and 55, which is absurd and absolutely, I mean, if we're not looking into why that is happening and understanding that it is obviously, due to something that is happening within us universally, which is, again, perimenopause and menopause, this, these hormonal changes, because that is, a time in life when we should be flourishing and building and creating and finding ourselves and more self-care, not less. And again, due to the fluctuation in our hormones and just understanding why. I think such a big part of it is the understanding of the why and knowing that this is happening not only to you, but to everybody, every woman this is going to happen to. And yes, everyone's experience is going to be very different and some are going to be more severe than others, but this is happening to all of us. So like you said, we used to talk to everybody when we were having babies and had no issue talking about like, how do you feel? Are you sick today? What's going on? Like, I mean, down to the nitty gritty of every little symptom, right? And it should be the same way now. Like there should be no shame in this, especially when it affects us mentally, physically, emotionally, and us as caregivers too. It affects our entire our sphere, right? Our husbands, our families, so much. So that I think it's just so important to talk about.
No doubt.
Yeah. So tell me about, okay, so mentally and brain symptoms, anything else that you were experiencing, just so that we can highlight that they are also, like you mentioned, tinnitus, which for those that don't know is a ringing in the ear. Vertigo is another big symptom of menopause that people don't realize, which is basically feeling dizziness. Any other symptoms that you had that you feel like are important to share? So if anyone is experiencing them, they know this could be your perimenopause.
Absolutely. Well, so I've spent my life in the mind-body space, right?
Yeah.
Like you said before. And so I have a very keen relationship with both my mind and my body. This is my
Yeah.
life's work. It's what I've
Right.
been doing. So I was aware of all these changes, but I didn't know why.
Right.
And so I started to develop joint pain. And it was during COVID, I was walking. Like, that's all I was freaking doing every single day was like walking,
You and
you
everybody
know?
else. Yeah.
I didn't have access to weights or anything. I was kind of stranded on an island in Florida. True story. So I walked and I started to develop some pain in my hips. And it got worse. It got worse. I sought all the natural ways. I finally got an x-ray. The doctor's like, you've got arthritis. Like, we can schedule the hip replacement tomorrow. And I was like, oh my God, what? Like,
Yeah.
I've been practicing yoga my whole life. I've been teaching yoga. I've been doing this stuff. I had no idea. And there was a lot of shame.
Yeah.
And I think this is really important for everyone to hear. Like, all of us, there's shame when our body changes, when we feel like we don't have control, when we feel like our body's not responding to us anymore, or we've just, we're just like inhabiting this different vehicle that is like, what is all this stuff happening? So in 2 years in a row, I got 2 hip replacements.
Wow.
In my late 50s. I'm 60 now. And it knocked me on my ass just because, from an ego standpoint.
Yeah, of
Because,
course.
again, this is, I owned a yoga studio for 17 years, and here I am getting a hip replacement too. But when I started to dig deeper, I mean, I would think I was too far gone at the time, and there is a genetic component to some of that. And when I started reading about it, I'm like, oh my God. Like, joint pain, just general joint pain, is estrogen related.
Yeah.
Estrogen is a lubricant. It's why everything goes dry.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And it's why our joints hurt. So I never made the correlation until it was too late.
Yeah.
So things like that, like, if we can understand, and I think that there's been an organization that have listed like 300 symptoms that are related to menopause. Like, when you start to look at that, wow, okay. And that doesn't mean you get overwhelmed or go, crawl under a rock.
Right.
It's like, okay, I'm not a bad person. Like, women, it's so easy to blame ourselves for our habits.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was a biggie.
That is huge. That's huge. I mean, 2 hip replacements is significant. And it's really interesting too, because like you said, you've been moving your body and practicing yoga your whole life. And so if anybody should have strengthened hips and not have joint pain, it should be you. And here you are experiencing that. But that is, I have a similar situation where I had horrible joint pain that started in my early 40s. And that was just one of the host of symptoms that I was experiencing. And, going to physicians and getting tested for autoimmunity and what's happening. And do you have rheumatoid arthritis and all these different things, and everything coming up negative. And, again, no one even mentioning perimenopause or estrogen. And it wasn't until finally, like, fast forward 4 years later in my late 40s, when I finally found a doctor who was treating menopausal women. And, she had looked at me and said, and after I told her all of my symptoms, including the joint pain, she was like, it is literally medical malpractice that no one has replaced your estrogen when you started to have these symptoms at 40 years old. Because basically for 8 years, I had no estrogen. And so, I've had a DEXA scan in my late 40s. And yeah, I mean, I do have new onset bone loss, which I will have, and I'm trying my hardest to reverse it. But it's because for 8 years, I didn't have estrogen in my body. And again, this is all part of the education, right? Sharing our stories so that, if you start experiencing joint pain, it might be time to ask for a DEXA scan, because the approved age for a DEXA scan is 65. By then is a little too late,
Well, this is how things are changing, and this is where our generation, we're kind of taking the hit, right?
Yes,
We're taking the hit for you all,
Yep.
and we're getting loud and we're sharing. But I went to a new gynecologist because I had moved when I was 59, and finally I was like, I want HRT, and she said, no, I can't. You're too old.
Yeah.
At 59, and I was like, no, okay. said, see ya, I'm going to find someone else.
Yeah.
And my new gynecologist said, absolutely. Let's
Right.
put you on something. By 65, we probably want to get you off.
Yeah.
You may not need it anymore. That's fine. But, so we have to advocate for ourselves. And this is where we not only have to advocate for ourselves, but for each other and really just boost each other. And I think one of my biggest passions right now, if you want to ask me about a why, it is to encourage women to support other women. Like not just lip service, like really have each other's freaking backs. Because we're all going through it. And so watch, and this is where mindfulness and awareness comes into play, watching our quick judgments of other women and pausing and recognizing, she's going through something. I'm going to have her back. And I think when we start doing that as women and we start demanding answers from the medical community, which we already are, things are going to change.
Yeah, man, I love that aspect of it because, really not coming from a place of judgment, when you're seeing other women and have no idea maybe why they're doing what they're doing, saying what they're saying, but understanding that it's all coming from a place that we just don't know about, right? We don't know what anyone else is going through. And, from your late 30s to mid 50s, things can get wonky, right? I mean, real crazy. And coming to, showing up in a place of not judgment, but just understanding and a supportive place can really make all of the difference in someone's life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I love that. I love that thought process about that. So tell us about, so the clients that you see now and, who you're helping, what do you think they're coming to you? Like, are they coming to you with knowing that they're in perimenopause or menopause, or is this something that you're discovering and figuring out together?
I think most women at this point, it's like, I think I might be, and there's certainly enough information out there now that it's not like I was. Like, what are you talking about? Joint pain has to do with menopause or inflammation? Like, I had no clue. I think we're even ahead of the game at this point. Where I find myself doing the most work is in helping my clients reframe this time. Reframe. So reset the mindset. Because here's the thing, like our body can inform the way we feel mentally, right? It does. Our bodies are constantly giving us information about how we feel and that it impacts our psychology, our mental health. But when we're going through these times, our body, like you said before, is wonky.
Yeah.
And so nothing feels good. Like for me, nothing felt good. Like my pants didn't fit and and my face looked different and my joints, like everything felt wonky. So to expect my body to help fuel my outlook on life was not going to happen. So this is when I started to really work on mindsets in menopause mindset. I, did a whole couple of years on TikTok about the menopause mindset. When we could start to reframe what this is, then we put our mind in charge. So, and you're a master at mindsets, Chrissy, as well. I mean, you're the mindset girl.
Yeah, I am. I love it.
So I really started to break down, and I've talked to organizations about this. I've done a lot of menopause at work, for people, because again, if our body feels like crap, our mind's going to feel like crap. So we've got to really rally around our mind. And so I'd love to go through some of the discoveries I've made just from working with other women on some of the mindsets that we can carry forward.
Absolutely.
Does that work? Cool.
Yeah, of course.
So just a super quick education. Most people know this. The work of Carol Dweck on mindsets. Fixed mindset, growth mindset. Right? Two ways of looking at life. The fixed, we usually saying, I'm stuck.
Yep.
I can't do anything. I'm just stuck here. Growth says, no, I can change. Things can change. There's ways to feel better. So in a fixed mindset or a fixed menopause mindset, we may be saying things like, I've tried everything. Nothing's working. Like this is kind of like your mother's menopause. It's part of getting older.
Right.
This is just the way it is. My doctor said everything's normal. Let me see, I have a whole list here. I'll never feel like myself again. I don't have time. I don't have money. And that's it. I'm just stuck.
Yeah.
This is it. And that breaks my heart.
Yeah.
It breaks my heart.
Me
But
too.
a lot of my clients, I'll hear some of those coming through.
Yeah. Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
okay, yeah, we can work with this.
Yeah.
Because if you're aware of it, awareness is key to change, right? So now how do we start to shift that? Now you don't have to adopt all of these, right? And some of them may stick, but you'll eventually create your own. But some of the growth mindsets is I can change. What worked for me in my 20s is not going to work for me in my 50s.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to make change, right? I haven't tried everything. I trust my body. My body is intelligent. Look what it's doing, trying to integrate these changes. Like it is working so hard to find balance. I won't give up. I can do hard things. I can change. I can do hard things. I'm not late.
Yeah.
Like, listen, mid 50s, come on.
Yeah.
We are just getting started.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not done. I'm ready to step up. I'm ready to make change. These are some growth menopause mindsets. And they can be really empowering.
Yes.
And what I encourage my clients to do, and the women that I work with, is, name a couple of your big symptoms. And maybe you take one or two. And you start to go through rabbit holes, down rabbit holes, not through them. Go down some rabbit holes to find out like what's happening now. What's the newest research now about sleep interruptions or about magnesium or about, how dealing with, weight resistance, weight loss resistance. So use just a couple. You don't have to tackle them all. So you want to name them. You want to educate yourself. And then you want to get in the driver's seat and you want to go advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
And turn over every rock and ask every friend and go through this process, because we're going to spend 40%, if we're lucky, 40% of our lives somewhere on this menopause continuum, this perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause phase. We don't want to feel like crap for 40% of our lives. I don't anyway.
No. Oh my gosh, not at all. Yeah, absolutely. I love how you have really, transferred all of the menopausal thoughts into growth and fixed mindset, because I am such a huge fan of Carol Dweck and living in a growth mindset in every aspect of our lives. And I feel like all of those statements and thoughts and mindsets that we can have are so important, because like a mindset is everything. I mean, as you think, so shall you be. And if that is not really the overarching, thought of everything, it drives our actions, our behaviors, our emotions. And it's so important for us to realize that, we're not finished, right? We are just getting started, and that we deserve to feel good. Right? We deserve to feel good in our bodies, and we deserve to feel healthy and strong. And we can. It's just, we have to fight for it right now. It's not something that's just given.
Oh, I love that you said that, because that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
When we're in a diminished physical state, which we are going to be at times during this experience, when we're in a diminished physical state, we have to fight to keep our mind in that growth mindset, in that abundance mindset, in the positive mindset. So you just have to recognize that. You might need sticky notes all over your house, on your mirrors, literally, everywhere, to remind you you're not done, to remind you you've got fight left in you. And then the other thing is, when I've done talks, I often talk about this time of our lives for women as being in the Super Bowl. Like we're training for and in the Super Bowl of our lives. And if we think about, just for a second, how much money is spent on the Super Bowl, right? How much time, energy, focus is spent on the Super Bowl and these athletes training for it. That is where we are. Like we are in the game of our lives. And we want to have that kind of that attitude, like I am going to figure this out. My body is, I am, because I want to live my fullest, best life, like you were saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And brain fog, damn you. We will still, and actually, I know we mentioned brain fog earlier on, but I did want to touch back on that because I think that just like hot flash, the term hot flash, brain fog is another one where we throw it around a lot when we talk about menopause, but unless you've experienced it, you don't really understand what it is. Just like a hot flash. Like I think people think that they've had hot flashes before and they correlate maybe night sweats with hot flashes. Unless you've actually experienced a hot flash, like when you do experience a hot flash, you're like, oh, okay, now I know what a hot flash is. So brain fog, that's like a general term that we use. And, I think everybody probably experiences it a little bit differently. For me, it is like what you mentioned. It's sort of word recall. It's remembering things. Like coming very authentically. I do like, if I'm giving a talk or even if I'm on a podcast and I'll have something in my head, a question I want to ask, and then all of a sudden it goes away and I'm like, oh my God, or I can't come up with the right words. That's embarrassing. I get nervous if I'm giving a talk. I'm like, if I completely forget in space what I think I wanted to say and then it goes away, like that's real. That happens, all the time. But there's also this like real fog that some days just feels like a cloud on my brain, right? And it feels like it's like I'm not really super motivated. I know I need to do things, but it's like it's literally fuzzy. It's like my whole brain feels fuzzy. How does it feel for you? How does brain fog show up for you?
Yeah, I think for me it feels it has felt because I'm through that phase, and I do think it's important for us to remember like there
that's
are
amazing.
waves, right? There are waves.
Yeah.
And I'm 10 years postmenopausal now and feel like, I still have, occasional night sweats if I drink wine and things like that. But things do get better.
Yeah.
They
That's
will
good.
get better.
That's great.
So, but for me, when I was in the thick of it, I want to say there was a lack of confidence. And I've never really lacked confidence in my life, not overly confident, but I'm not like, and I felt like, who is thinking this?
Yeah,
like,
right.
Seriously, Cara? Like,
Yeah.
And so for me, it was that self-doubt. It was the lack of confidence that was my brain fog. I wasn't as sharp. Like I didn't feel like I was on my skates, right? Going back to my skating, like really right on the edge of my blade. Like I didn't feel like I was sharp. I was just in some ways going through motions.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to explain it. Not feeling sharp, feeling dull. Everything feels a little dulled. Yeah. Well, Cara, thank you so much for sharing all of your experience that you went through, as well as all of your beautiful insights on menopause and the brain and how we can not fix our mindset, grow our mindset around all of these, emotions and things that we are feeling during this time of our life. Tell my listeners where they can find you.
Yeah, well, I'm most active these days on Substack, which is a newsletter platform.
Yeah.
I write a daily mindset message, really for this audience, on ways to stay sharp, stay confident, things that we can do to just stay ahead of it, and not just pull ourselves down underwater. So that is called Sparked.
Okay.
And so if you just Google Sparked and my name and Substack, you'll find it. I'll share the link with you, Chrissy.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
then my website is carabradley.net. So that's where I have all my info about coaching and other things that I do.
Awesome. Well, we will be sure to link Sparked and Substack, all that stuff in the show notes so people can easily find you and find that. Thank you so much for joining us today. Guys, you can find me at Suburban Warrior on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and please be sure to let us know what you think of this episode. Leave us a comment and a review, because the more reviews that we get, the more likely more women will be able to find this podcast and hear Cara's amazing story, as well as get educated on all of the things that are happening to them during perimenopause and menopause, because we are really truly starting a movement here. We are redefining midlife wellness with grit and grace, and we want you all to be a part of it. So thank you for joining us today. We'll be back next week with another awesome suburban warrior here to share her story with you. Until next time, stay healthy, stay well, and we will see you next time.